By the time the last child stopped coughing, the rain had found a fifth way through the roof. I stood in the hallway outside the girls' room with a dented mixing bowl in my hands, listening to water drip from the ceiling with the steady patience of something that knew it was winning. Plink, plink, plink. The sound had become part of Mercy House's evening music, right along with radiator groans, whispering children, and Mrs. Alvarez humming hymns under her breath while she folded donated laundry. The bowl was already half full. I stared at it and tried very hard not to cry. Crying wasted water, and apparently we had plenty of that coming through the ceiling already. Behind me, 7 little girls slept shoulder to shoulder beneath mismatched blankets. Across the hall, the boys were quieter than usual, probably because I had bribed them with the last of the cinnamon crackers and threatened to make them help me scrub the fellowship hall if anyone started a pillow fight after lights out. Mercy House had rules. Not many, but enough. No fighting, no stealing, no going outside after dark. Say thank you when someone feeds you. Apologize when you're wrong. Pray if you want to. Don't if you don't. And lately, don't look too closely at Miss Grace's face when another bill arrives. I carried the bowl to the kitchen and emptied it into the sink. The pipes knocked like they resented being asked to work. Everything in that old church resented being asked to work. The pipes, the lights, the boiler, the ancient copy machine in the office that chewed paper like it was trying to punish us for hope. On the kitchen table sat the envelope I had been avoiding all evening. It was white, crisp, official. The kind of envelope that did not care how many children had nowhere else to go. I dried my hands on my skirt and sat down. For a moment I only looked at it. Then I opened it again, as if the words might have changed since the first time. They had not. Final notice. Outstanding balance. 30 days. Closure proceedings. I read the letter until the words blurred together into one long, merciless sentence. You have failed. My name was printed near the bottom. Grace Holloway, Director of Mercy House Shelter. Director sounded important. It sounded like someone with a staff, a budget, a desk that didn't wobble, and a working coffee maker. In reality, it meant I was the woman who fixed clogged toilets, stretched soup, called donors who stopped answering, and smiled at children while the world quietly took things away from them. My phone buzzed beside the envelope. I snatched it up too quickly. For one foolish second, I thought it might be a miracle. A donor, a grant approval, an apology from the church board saying they had made a terrible mistake, and of course Mercy House could remain open. Instead, it was a reminder from the electric company. Payment due tomorrow. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because if I didn't laugh, I was going to put my head down on that kitchen table and break into pieces. Miss Grace? I turned. Benny stood in the doorway in socks too big for his feet, his stuffed dinosaur tucked under one arm. He was 8 years old, all elbows and suspicion, with a gap where his front tooth had finally given up last week. What are you doing up? I asked softly. He rubbed one eye. The rain woke me. Of course it did. The roof over the boys' room had been patched 3 times with tarps, prayers, and a level of optimism that should have embarrassed me. I'll move your cot away from the wall, I said. He looked at the letter on the table. Benny noticed everything. Children who had lost too much always did. Are we in trouble? My heart squeezed so sharply I had to take a breath before answering. No, baby, I said. We're just having a hard week. His little face tightened. That's what grown-ups say when the trouble is big. I hated how true that was. I crossed the kitchen and crouched in front of him. I smoothed a hand over his curls and made my voice steady. Listen to me. You are safe tonight. You have a bed tonight. You have breakfast in the morning. That is what we know. We are not borrowing trouble from tomorrow. He considered that with the grave wisdom of someone who had already met too many tomorrows. Can I have pancakes? We have oatmeal. His disappointment was immediate and dramatic. With brown sugar, I added. He sighed. Fine. Back to bed, negotiator. He shuffled away, dinosaur dragging by the tail. I waited until I heard the soft creak of his cot before I let my smile fall. Safe tonight. Breakfast in the morning. That was what we knew. Everything beyond that felt like fog. I cleaned the kitchen because cleaning was something my hands could do while my mind tried not to unravel. I wiped counters that were already clean. I lined up chipped mugs. I folded dish towels. I checked the pantry and counted cans. 12 cans of beans, 8 of corn, 3 crushed tomatoes, 1 jar of peanut butter. Enough rice to make dinner stretch if I pretended seasoning was a main ingredient. At midnight, Mrs. Alvarez left after giving me a look that said she knew I was lying about being fine, but loved me enough not to make me prove it. Father Marcus had gone home hours before with a migraine and guilt sitting heavy on his shoulders. He had fought for us in the board meeting. I knew he had. But fighting did not pay debts. After I locked the side door, I found myself standing at the entrance to the sanctuary. The church was dark, except for the small red lamp near the tabernacle and the low glow of stormlight pushing through stained glass. The saints looked down in jewel-colored fragments, blue robes, gold halos, brown hands lifted in blessing. Rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. I should have gone to bed. Instead, I walked down the aisle. My shoes made soft sounds against the old floorboards. Every pew held memories. Children coloring during service, old women fanning themselves in summer, choir voices rising toward the rafters like they could shake heaven awake. At the front, I knelt. The wood bit into my knees. I folded my hands, then unfolded them. I knew how to pray properly. I had been raised on proper prayers. My grandmother could pray for 20 minutes without repeating herself once, voice strong enough to make every devil in a 5-mile radius reconsider its choices. But that night, I did not have anything polished left in me. "Lord," I whispered, "I'm tired." The words came out rough. I swallowed and stared at the cross above the altar. I know there are worse things happening in the world. I know we are not the only people hurting. But those children upstairs have already lost too much. They shouldn't have to lose this place, too. The rain grew harder. Or maybe the church had grown quieter. "I don't need anything fancy," I continued. "I don't need comfort. I don't need a new car or a nice house or one of those vacations people post about with blue water and tiny umbrellas and drinks." My throat tightened. "I need the roof fixed. I need the lights kept on. I need food in the pantry. I need the board to stop looking at those children like numbers on a page. I pressed my clasped hands against my mouth. "I need a miracle." The word trembled in the air. A miracle. I hated how desperate it sounded. I hated more that it was true. "Please," I whispered. "If you are listening, send help." The sanctuary answered with silence. For several seconds, nothing happened. No heavenly choir. No sudden warmth. No angel descending through the rafters with a checkbook and a contractor. I exhaled, embarrassed by my own hope. Then every candle in the sanctuary went out. All at once, I froze. The darkness was immediate and complete, swallowing the altar, the pews, the saints in the windows. Even the red lamp near the tabernacle flickered once, twice, then steadied with a weak glow. My heartbeat climbed into my throat. "Father Marcus?" I called. No answer. A sound came from behind the altar. Not a footstep. Something deeper. Like the church itself had taken a breath. The air changed. It grew heavy and warm, carrying the scent of smoke, cedar, and something sweet enough to be almost pleasant. The shadows near the front of the sanctuary gathered together, folding inward until they had shape. A man stepped out of them. I stopped breathing. He was tall. Taller than any man had a right to be inside a church after midnight. He wore black from the throat to boots, not a suit exactly, not a coat exactly, but something elegant and severe that looked untouched by the rain. Dark hair fell over his forehead in damp waves, though I had not heard a door open. His face was sharp, beautiful in a way that felt unfair and dangerous, like a knife someone had polished until it shone. And his eyes glowed gold. Not reflected light, not imagination. Glowed. I rose too fast, nearly tripping over my own skirt. I grabbed the edge of the nearest pew to steady myself. "Who are you?" The stranger looked around the sanctuary with mild curiosity, as if he had arrived early to a dinner party, and found the decorations disappointing. "Well," he said, voice smooth as sin wrapped in velvet, "that was a rather heartbreaking prayer." I clutched my cross necklace. His gaze dropped to it, one dark brow lifted. "Careful. You seem like the type to stab a man with faith if startled." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. He smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was amused, handsome, and entirely too comfortable. "You asked for help," he said. "I came." "No." The word escaped before I could stop it. "No, that is not how prayer works." "Isn't it?" He tilted his head. "You send longing into the void. Something answers. Seems straightforward." "The void?" "A figure of speech." "In a church?" "I'm adaptable." I stared at him, trying to force my mind into making sense of what my eyes insisted was real. "Are you an angel?" He laughed. The sound was low, warm, and completely inappropriate. "No." The answer should not have disappointed me. It did. "Then what are you?" He took one step closer. The red lamp flickered again. Shadows moved across his face. For one brief, terrible second, I saw something behind him. Not wings, not exactly, but darkness unfolding like a crown. My fingers tightened around the cross until the edges pressed into my palm. His smile softened into something sharper. "I am many things, Grace Holloway." My blood seemed to stop. "You know my name." "I know several of your names. Grace Elaine Holloway, Director of Mercy House, Protector of Lost Children. Terrible liar when asked if she's eaten dinner. Secret hoarder of cinnamon crackers. That is private information. That is barely information. How did you get in here?" He glanced upward. "Poorly maintained roof, if we're being poetic." "This is not funny." "No," he said, and for the first time his amusement faded. "It isn't." The change in him frightened me more than the smile had. He looked toward the ceiling, toward the rooms above us, where the children slept. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its teasing edge. "You are 3 months behind on the mortgage. The boiler will fail before winter settles properly. The west roof beam is rotting faster than your repairman admitted. The church board meets in 2 days to decide whether Mercy is too expensive to continue funding." My lips parted. No one knew all of that. Not even Mrs. Alvarez. "I can fix it," he said. Hope rose before I could crush it. That was the cruelest part. Even standing in front of a golden-eyed stranger made of shadows and arrogance, some desperate part of me still reached for the word fix. I shook my head. "Who are you?" He smiled again, but this time there was something ancient behind it. "Not angel." I gathered that. "A duke, technically." "A what?" "And depending on who is telling the story, a monster. A curse, a necessary evil, an unfortunate dinner guest. What are you?" I demanded. His eyes burned brighter. "A demon." The word landed between us with the force of a struck bell. The sanctuary tilted. I blinked at him, then at the cross, then back at him. A demon, in my church. Answering my prayer. My grandmother's voice rang in my memory, stern and horrified. "Girl, you better test every spirit." "I rebuke you," I whispered. The demon sighed. "Yes, I assumed we'd get to that. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." A classic. You cannot be here. And yet, you need to leave. I'm afraid that would be inconvenient for both of us. The edges of my vision darkened. I tried to breathe, but the air felt too thick. The pew under my hand seemed suddenly far away. My knees weakened. The demon noticed. His expression shifted. "Oh, don't do that." "Do what?" "That fainting thing humans do when reality becomes rude." "I am not going to faint." "You absolutely are." "I don't faint." "Grace." The way he said my name, like he knew it, like he had tasted it before speaking, sent a shiver straight through me. He moved toward me. I stepped back and missed the kneeler completely. The whole sanctuary rolled sideways. His curse came softly, almost politely. Then strong arms caught me before I hit the floor. The last thing I saw was his face above mine, too handsome, too close, his golden eyes narrowed with what looked disturbingly like concern. "Of course," he muttered. "The one woman in the city brave enough to summon me can't stay conscious long enough to be impressed." I wanted to tell him I had not summoned anything. I wanted to tell him to put me down. I wanted to tell him that demons were not supposed to smell like cedar and rain. But the darkness rose up, warm and absolute, and swallowed every word before I could speak. I woke to the smell of tea. For a hopeful, stupid moment, I thought everything had been a nightmare brought on by stress, rainwater, and not enough dinner. I thought I would open my eyes and find myself in the sanctuary alone, embarrassed but otherwise safe, with nothing worse waiting for me than an overdue electric bill and a roof determined to baptize us all in our sleep. Then a man's voice said, "Before you panic, I'd like it noted that I did not drop you." My eyes flew open. The demon sat in Father Marcus's chair beside the altar, one long leg crossed over the other, holding a chipped mug from our kitchen like he had every right to be there. The candles were lit again, the storm still pressed against the stained glass windows. I was lying across the front pew with my cardigan folded beneath my head. My cross necklace rested warm against my chest. I grabbed it anyway. He sighed. Yes, rebuking holy wrath, righteous indignation. We covered that. I sat up too fast, and the sanctuary tilted for a second. Do not speak to me like we are having a normal conversation. We are having a normal conversation. You are a demon in my church, and you fainted in front of me. We're both adjusting. I swung my feet to the floor and looked toward the balcony, then the hallway leading back to the stairs. The children. Asleep, he said. All of them. Warm, dry, and dreaming of things with too much sugar. My blood went hot. What did you do to them? His golden eyes sharpened. Nothing harmful. That is not an answer. It is the most important part of the answer. I stood, unsteady but determined. If you touched one hair on their heads, I didn't. His voice lost its lazy amusement. I don't hurt children. The words were quiet. Too quiet. For a moment, something passed over his face. Not softness exactly, but the memory of pain wearing armor. Then it was gone. He lifted the mug. Tea? No. It has honey. I said no. Suit yourself. It's terrible anyway. That is our tea. That explains it. I should have been afraid. I was afraid. My heart was beating hard enough to bruise, but terror had to share space with irritation, and irritation was easier to stand on. Why are you here? I demanded. You asked for help. I asked God for help. Yes, awkward. No. I pointed at him. No, there has been a mistake. He looked amused again. Possibly. But not by me. I took a slow breath and forced myself to think. Demons lied, everyone knew that. They tempted, twisted, bargained, destroyed, and yet this one sat in a church holding bad tea, wearing an expression like he had come to negotiate building repairs. What do you want? I asked. His smile returned, faint and dangerous. There she is. I am not agreeing to anything. I haven't offered anything. I'm preparing you for disappointment. How considerate, he stood. The sanctuary seemed smaller with him upright. Shadows clung to him strangely, as if they liked him better than the walls. He walked toward me, not quickly, but with the kind of confidence that made speed unnecessary. I held my ground even though every sensible part of me wanted to back away. He stopped several feet in front of me and reached inside his coat. I flinched. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His mouth tightened, but all he withdrew was a folded sheet of black paper sealed with red wax. A contract, he said. I stared at it. Absolutely not. You haven't read it. It is black paper handed to me by a demon after midnight. I do not need a law degree. A shame. I hear lawyers make excellent demons. I am serious. So am I. He extended the paper. Read it. I did not take it. He waited. Rain tapped against the glass. Somewhere upstairs, the old building creaked and settled. Water dripped into a bowl in the hallway with that same patient sound. My gaze shifted despite myself. He saw that too. The west roof beam will last another 6 weeks, he said. Less if the storms continue. My stomach sank. Stop doing that. Being accurate? Knowing things. I know many things. It's one of my more irritating qualities. One of? His lips curved. Careful, Miss Holloway. You're beginning to enjoy my company. I would rather eat the electric bill. That can also be arranged, but I doubt it would help your digestion. I snatched the contract from his hand. The paper was warm, not hot. Warm, like it had been resting in sunlight, though there had been no sunlight in hours. The writing shimmered dark red across the page in elegant script. I expected tricks, tiny letters, blood demands. Something about my soul, in paragraph 7. Instead, the terms were painfully clear. All debts owed by Mercy House Shelter would be paid in full. The deed would be secured in Grace Holloway's name, protected from sale, seizure, or church board interference. A trust would be established for the children's food, clothing, education, medical care, and maintenance of the property. Repairs would begin immediately. No child, worker, resident, volunteer, or member of Mercy House would be harmed, claimed, cursed, tempted, possessed, relocated, or otherwise spiritually endangered as payment. I read that line 3 times. Then I looked up. He shrugged. You seemed like the type to ask. What is the cost? Your company. My company. Yes. For what? I need a fiancée. I stared at him. Then I laughed once, sharp and humorless. No. You don't even know the details. A demon just told me he needs a fiancée. The details can only make that worse. It is temporary. No. Entirely pretend. No. Mostly ceremonial. No. You say that word beautifully, very firm, very judgmental. I'm glad you're entertained. Frequently. I looked back at the contract, searching for the trap. Why me? His expression changed. Not much. Just enough. Because you are inconveniently pure of heart. I frowned. That sounds like an insult. From me, it nearly is. I am not pure. I get angry. I lie when children ask if everything is fine. I have uncharitable thoughts about donors who send expired canned goods. Last week I called the copier a demon, which now feels rude to the copier. His gaze lingered on me, bright and unreadable. Purity is not the absence of frustration, Grace. It is what remains when the world gives you every reason to become cruel, and you refuse. The words struck too close. I looked away first. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I forced myself back to the page. It says I must accompany you to the Underworld. Yes. As your fiancé. Yes. For 30 days. Possibly less. Possibly more? No, I may be many things, but I honor my contracts. That is supposed to comfort me? It usually does. To whom? People with better instincts. I kept reading. At the bottom, there was a blank line for my signature. Beneath it, another line already marked by a symbol instead of a name. A crown encircled by flame. What happens if I refuse? He studied me for a long moment. Then I leave, he said. Your shelter closes. The children are scattered into systems already too full to hold them gently. The board sells this property to a developer who turns the sanctuary into expensive apartments with very little soul. You spend the rest of your life wondering if pride cost them a home. The cruelty of it stole my breath. You're manipulating me. Yes. At least lie about it. I find honesty more efficient. I hated him a little for that. I hated more that he was right. Upstairs, one of the children coughed in their sleep. The sound moved through the church like a hand around my heart. I thought of Benny asking for pancakes. of Maya hiding crackers beneath her pillow because hunger had taught her not to trust full cupboards, of the twins who still slept with the light on, of every child who had arrived at Mercy House carrying a trash bag of belongings and eyes too old for their faces. I had prayed for a miracle. What came was a demon with a contract. Maybe that was the kind of help desperate people got. I pressed my fingers against the cross at my throat and closed my eyes. "Lord," I whispered so softly I barely heard myself. "If this is foolish, stop me." The candles did not go out. The floor did not shake. No angel appeared to drag me away from my terrible decision. Only the rain answered. I opened my eyes. The demon was watching me with an expression I could not understand. "If I sign this," I said, "the shelter is safe first, not after, not eventually. First. Done. The children are protected? Already written. No souls. I don't collect them. Messy business. No harming Father Marcus or Mrs. Alvarez. Fine. No tricks with wording." He placed a hand over his heart. "You wound me. I am trying to." His smile flashed. I picked up the pen that had appeared beside the contract. I did not ask where it came from. At that point, I had reached my limit for impossible details. My hand trembled once. Then I signed. Grace Elaine Holloway. The moment the last letter touched the page, the ink flared gold. A deep sound rolled through the sanctuary. I jerked back. What was that? "The contract accepting you." I don't like how you phrased that. You're about to like the next part less. The floor beneath the altar cracked. I looked down. Dark red light spilled between the floorboards. "No," I said. "No, no, no." The demon held out his hand. I did not take it. The crack widened, racing down the aisle in a jagged line of fire. Pews groaned. Candles bent sideways, though there was no wind. The cross above the altar shuddered, but did not fall. What is happening? We're leaving. Now? Did you have other plans? I need to pack. There are shops in hell. That is not reassuring. The floor opened beneath us. I screamed. He caught my wrist and pulled me against him just as the sanctuary disappeared. For one impossible second, I saw Mercy House above me. The altar, the stained glass, the little red lamp still burning faithfully in the dark. Then we fell. Down through smoke, down through heat, down through 1,000 whispering voices. The demon's arm locked around my waist, holding me to him as if the darkness itself might try to steal me. I clutched his coat and shouted the only thing that came to mind. "I hate you." His laugh rumbled against my ear. "Give it time, Miss Holloway." Below us, the dark split open like a mouth, and hell rose to meet us.
Humans fell with absolutely no appreciation for craftsmanship. The passage between her church and my world was ancient magic, carved through realms with an elegance that had taken tyrants, kings, and hungry gods centuries to imitate badly. It bent gravity into ribbon. It split darkness without tearing it. It opened the throat of the world and allowed one to pass from prayer to damnation in a single breath. Grace Holloway spent the entire descent screaming into my coat. "I hate you." Her hands were locked in the front of my jacket, fingers twisted in the black fabric as if she meant to strangle me with tailoring. I laughed against the rush of smoke and wind. "Give it time, Miss Holloway." "I will not." Very firm. I admire consistency. "Put me back." That would be falling upward, and I try not to do undignified things before breakfast. She made a sound against my chest that might have been fury, terror, or a prayer too fast for even God to catch. I tightened my arm around her waist. That, unfortunately, was not theatre. The passage did not like her. I felt it immediately. The old infernal road testing her warmth, her pulse, the bright stubborn flare of her soul. Hell was a place of appetites. It noticed innocence the way wolves notice blood. So I wrapped my power around her before anything below could look too closely. "She's mine," I told the dark. The dark hissed back. I smiled. Then the passage spat us into my receiving hall. I landed first, boots striking black stone hard enough to send a ring of gold fire racing across the floor. Grace stumbled with the force of arrival, and I caught her before her knees could meet the marble. She clung to me for one stunned second. Then she shoved herself away as if my touch had offended her entire bloodline. "Do not grab me. You were falling. I was falling because of you." Yes, but elegantly by the end. Her eyes flashed up at me, wide and furious. Her brown skin warmed the red glow beneath the floor. She was breathing hard. Her cross necklace still rested against her chest, small and gold and irritatingly sincere. I had not removed it. She would have noticed if I had. Worse, she would have looked disappointed. I had endured wars, curses, crowns, and one deeply unpleasant decade involving a plague of singing locusts. But I suspected disappointment from Grace Holloway would be uniquely unbearable. She turned in a slow circle. The receiving hall of Blackthorn Keep had been designed to intimidate visiting monarchs, punish ambitious nobles, and impress anyone foolish enough to mistake restraint for weakness. Obsidian columns rose into a vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. Rivers of ember ran beneath glass panels in the floor. Tall windows opened to the seventh circle, where the sky burned wine red over jagged mountains and distant towers cut the horizon like black teeth. Grace stared at all of it in complete silence. For once. Then she whispered, "This is hell." "A portion of it," I said. "Hell is very large. Terrible planning committee." She looked at me. "You brought me to hell." "Yes. In my church clothes. I did offer shops. Stop talking. Unlikely." She pressed a hand to her stomach and looked toward the great doors, as if she might simply walk out and find a bus stop. "There is no exit that leads where you want," I said. "I did not ask." "You were thinking loudly." Her eyes narrowed. "Stay out of my thoughts." "I'm not in your thoughts. Your face is simply honest." That bothered her more than it should have. Interesting. Before she could respond, the tall doors at the end of the hall opened without sound. Morrow entered first, because Morrow always entered first. My steward was 7 feet of bone-thin discipline dressed in grey velvet, with curled horns polished to a shine, and a ledger chained to his wrist. Behind him came 2 lesser servants carrying silver trays, neither of them brave enough to look directly at Grace. Wise. "Your Grace," Morrow said, bowing deeply. Grace flinched. I glanced at her. "Not you." She blinked. "What?" "He means me. It's a title." "Oh." She drew herself upright. "Well, that is confusing. I shall ask the court to reorganize centuries of etiquette at your convenience." "That would be kind of you." Morrow's yellow eyes flicked between us. I gave him a pleasant smile. He immediately looked at the floor. "The arrangements have begun," he said. "The debts of Mercy House Shelter have been settled in full. The deed has transferred according to contract terms. Repair crews above have received all necessary permits, funding, and memories of having been scheduled weeks ago." Grace went still. I felt the shift in her before I saw it. The anger did not leave her exactly. Grace's anger seemed loyal, but something beneath it trembled. "The shelter is safe?" she asked. Morrow glanced at me for permission. I gave a slight nod. "Yes, my lady," he said. "The property is protected. The children remain unharmed. The pantry has been stocked. The roof will be repaired before sunrise." Her lips parted. No sound came out. For a woman who had rebuked me twice, insulted me once, and threatened me with holy judgment in my own contract negotiation, Grace Holloway looked most defenseless when handed hope. I did not enjoy noticing that. "See," I said lightly, "I am occasionally useful." She turned to me. Her eyes shone, but she did not let any tears fall. Stubborn creature. "If this is a trick, it isn't. If anything happens to them, it won't." "You swear?" The hall quieted. Demons did not swear lightly. Humans had mostly forgotten that. Hell had not. Morrow's head lifted in alarm. I looked only at Grace. "I swear on my name," I said. "No harm will come to the children of Mercy House by my hand, command, bargain, silence, negligence, or design." The oath burned through the air. Gold fire curled around my wrist, then vanished beneath my cuff. Grace watched it disappear. That looked painful. It was. Good. I laughed before I could stop myself. Morrow looked as though he wanted to step backward into retirement. Grace's attention snapped to him. "And please don't call me my lady." "You are the Duke's betrothed," Morrow said carefully. "I am the Duke's fake betrothed." "Not in public," I said. She pointed at me. "Do not start." "I started centuries ago. You'll catch up." Morrow cleared his throat. "Shall I prepare the Eastern suite for the human offering?" The temperature in the hall dropped. Not by accident. Morrow froze. The servants behind him lowered their trays until the silver trembled. Grace noticed. Of course she noticed. She looked from them to me, her brows drawing together. "My fiancée," I said softly. Morrow bowed so low his horns nearly touched the floor. "Forgive me, Your Grace. My lady." Grace's expression changed. Not fear, something more complicated. "I am not an offering," she said. "No," I agreed. "You are not." Morrow remained bowed until I flicked 2 fingers in dismissal. He left quickly. The servants followed quicker. Grace watched them go. Only when the doors closed did she speak. "You scared him." "Morrow scares easily. He is 7 feet tall and has horns." "Yes, delicate constitution." She looked up at me, and for the first time since I had met her, there was less panic in her gaze than calculation. "You have not told me your name." I smiled. "You may call me Your Grace. Everyone else does." "I am not everyone else." No, she was not. That was already becoming a problem. "Duke Vale, then. That is still not your name." "It is one of them. The real one." I studied her. She stood in the center of my infernal hall with rain still drying in her dark hair, wearing a cardigan, a simple skirt, and a cross, looking at me as if names were not dangerous things, as if they were meant to be given, as if asking for mine did not reach through 500 years of ash and titles and touch something that had once sat at a human table. "The one your mother used," she said, quieter now. The words struck with embarrassing precision. For one moment the hall was gone. There was only a kitchen long dead, bread cooling beneath a cloth, a woman's tired voice calling me in from the rain. I hated how quickly memory could still find me, not because I was ashamed. Never that. The name had been mine before the horns, before the crown, before hell learned to bow. I had kept it through centuries because it was human, because it was stubborn, because every demon who mocked it only proved how little they understood. Hell had given me many grand names, but humans had given me the first one, the best one. I lifted my chin. "Patrick." Grace blinked. "Patrick." I raised an eyebrow. "Is something wrong with Patrick?" "That's a human name." I went still before I could stop myself. There it was. Not mockery, not disgust, only surprise. "I didn't expect demons to have human names," she said. A laugh tried to come. It failed somewhere in my chest. I smiled instead. sharp enough to hide behind. Most don't. Her gaze searched my face, too perceptive by half, this church girl. Why do you? No accepting food from strangers, I said. She stared. What? First rule of the Underworld. Never accept food, drink, jewelry, flowers, compliments, apologies, invitations, or unusually well-behaved rabbits from anyone unless I approve it. She frowned. You changed the subject. Second rule. If you notice me changing the subject, have the grace not to mention it. My name is Grace. That joke is beneath both of us. I assure you, very little is beneath me. Patrick. The way she said it made something ancient in me ache. Not your Grace, not Duke Vale, not monster. Patrick. I turned away before she could see too much. You need rest, clothing, a believable introduction, and possibly a meal, since you refused tea and then fell through reality on an empty stomach. I am not finished asking questions. No, but I am finished answering them. For now. I looked back at her. She was watching me with that steady, inconvenient compassion already gathering in her eyes, as if she had glimpsed the locked door and had every intention of finding the key. Dangerous woman. Yes, I said. For now. Beyond the windows, a bell tolled across the seventh circle, deep enough to shake dust from the rafters. Grace looked toward the sound. What is that? I smiled, because smiling was easier than remembering. The courts learned I brought home a bride. Her shoulders tightened. I offered her my arm. She looked at it as though it might bite. It might, I said. I hate this place. You've only seen the foyer. That is not helping. No, I said, lowering my voice as the second bell rang. But staying close to me will. For a moment I thought she would refuse out of pure principle. Then she lifted her chin, stepped beside me, and placed her hand on my sleeve. Not trembling, not trusting, but choosing. And for reasons I had no intention of examining, that felt far more dangerous than all of hell waiting outside my doors.
If hell had a welcome committee, it came armed with measuring tape. 3 silent servants swept me into an eastern suite before I could demand answers from Patrick, and within 10 minutes I had been bathed, dressed, pinned, laced, and polished within an inch of my life. I did not enjoy any of it. The suite itself was larger than the entire girls' dormitory at Mercy House. Black stone walls shimmered faintly with veins of red light, like fire trapped beneath glass. Heavy curtains framed windows overlooking mountains sharp enough to cut the sky. The bed was enormous, covered in dark velvet, and looked like something a wicked queen would faint across after poisoning a relative. I refused to sit on it on principle. The servants gave me a gown the color of deep emerald, with long sleeves, a high neckline, and gold stitching that caught the firelight whenever I moved. It was beautiful. That made me trust it less. I touched the small cross at my throat for the 10th time. One of the servants, a woman with silver horns curling back from her temples, noticed the necklace and quickly lowered her eyes. "Is it bothering you?" I asked. "No, my lady." "You're sure?" Her gaze flicked to the cross again. "It is unusual here. That makes 2 of us." She did not laugh. Apparently hell did not encourage workplace humor. By the time Patrick returned, I was standing in front of a tall mirror, glaring at myself. He stopped in the doorway. For once, he said nothing. I turned. "What?" His golden eyes traveled from the pinned coils of my hair to the hem of the gown, then back to my face. His expression shifted too quickly for me to catch it. Then he smiled. A terrible sign. "You look dangerously respectable." "I was respectable before the dress?" "Yes, but now you look like you could overthrow a kingdom and still write a thank you note." "I would write a very polite thank you note." "I don't doubt it." He wore black again, because apparently demons had no imagination when it came to color. His coat was cut with cruel elegance, embroidered in black thread that only showed when the light touched it. A ring burned on one of his fingers, set with a red stone that pulsed like a heartbeat. I pointed at it. Is that cursed? Several times. Why would you wear it? It matches my eyes when I'm angry. Of course it does. His smile widened. Ready? No. Good. Honesty will serve you well until it gets you killed. Patrick. He paused. I had learned something in the last hour. His title made people tremble. His name made him still. I did not know what to do with that yet. What exactly are we walking into? A gathering. In hell. Yes. With demons. Mostly. What does mostly mean? It means stay beside me. That did not comfort me. He offered his arm. I looked at it. Must we? I asked. We are engaged. Pretend engaged. Pretend engaged people still have arms. I don't see why that is relevant. Grace. I hated how naturally my name fit in his mouth. I placed my hand on his sleeve. Fine, I said. But if anyone tries to eat me, I'm blaming you. I would never allow anyone to eat you at a formal event. The etiquette alone would be dreadful. I stared at him. He looked pleased with himself. The gathering took place in a hall that made the sanctuary at Mercy House look like a shoebox. A magnificent shoebox. The ceiling arched so high it vanished into shadow. Chandeliers hung above us, burning with blue flame. Long tables curved around the room in a crescent, covered with black linens, silver dishes, and food I had no intention of touching. Music drifted from somewhere unseen, low and haunting, played on instruments that sounded almost like violins, if violins had learned grief personally. And everywhere, demons watched us. Some were beautiful in a way that made my skin prickle. Others had horns, scales, wings, too many teeth, or eyes that glowed from faces too still to be trusted. They stood in clusters, whispering behind jeweled hands and goblets filled with dark red wine. The moment Patrick entered, every conversation died. Not quieted. Died. Heads bowed, bodies bent. Even the music faltered. I felt his posture change beside me. Not much. Just enough to remind the room who he was. The annoying man who stole terrible tea was gone. The demon duke of the seventh circle had arrived. Smile, he murmured without moving his lips. I am in hell. Yes, try to look thrilled. I am considering stepping on your foot. That would help the romance. I smiled. Not because he told me to, because if I didn't, I might have turned and fled. We moved through the room slowly. Demons bowed and greeted him as Your Grace. Then their eyes slid to me with curiosity, disbelief, and something sharper. Hunger, perhaps. Not for flesh. For weakness. Patrick introduced me only once. My fiancée, Grace Holloway. A ripple moved through the hall. I lifted my chin. No one laughed. That somehow felt worse. At a table near the center, Patrick pulled out a chair for me with exaggerated courtesy. I sat because my legs were beginning to consider rebellion. A plate appeared in front of me, filled with delicate pastries dusted in gold sugar. I did not touch them. Patrick sat beside me and immediately stole one. Don't eat my food, I whispered. You weren't eating it. Because you told me not to accept Underworld food. This is my food. It was on my plate. A tragic misunderstanding. You are impossible. Frequently, yes. He bit into the pastry and looked deeply satisfied. I wished, very briefly, that holy water came in spray bottles. Across the hall, nobles continued to stare. The longer I sat there, the more I noticed the way they behaved around Patrick. They did not simply respect him. They feared the space he occupied. A demon with a crown of antlers stepped back when Patrick shifted in his chair. A woman with violet eyes stopped speaking when his gaze drifted her way. He leaned toward me. The one with the jeweled horns once poisoned 3 husbands and a brother over a seating arrangement. I kept my eyes forward. Why are you telling me this? So you won't compliment her earrings. I wasn't going to compliment anyone's earrings. A shame. Hers are made from the brother. My smile nearly broke. He stole another pastry. Patrick. What? That was mine. You looked overwhelmed. I'm helping. You are the reason I am overwhelmed. Nonsense. I am delightful. You dragged me into hell. And provided formal wear. Kidnappers do that in fairy tales. He turned his head, eyes bright with amusement. Are you comparing me to a fairy prince? I am comparing you to a cautionary tale. Before he could answer, a demon approached our table. He was tall and narrow, with smooth, dark hair tied at the nape of his neck and a silver chain draped across his chest. His smile was polished, but his eyes were cold enough to make my stomach tighten. Your Grace, he said, bowing to Patrick. Patrick did not rise. Lord Cale. The demon's attention moved to me, slowly. Lady Holloway, he said, the court has been desperate to see whether the rumor was true. I'm sorry to disappoint anyone hoping I was imaginary, I said. A few demons nearby inhaled sharply. Patrick's mouth twitched. Lord Cale's smile thinned. Not disappointing, merely surprising. One does not expect the Duke of the Seventh Circle to bind himself to a church-bred human. The word human sounded dirty in his mouth. Patrick picked up his wineglass but did not drink. Careful. Lord Cale ignored the warning. Or perhaps he was foolish enough to think it did not apply to him. Tell me, he continued, gaze fixed on me. Does he keep you for sentiment or strategy? Humans are fragile things. Useful for bargaining, perhaps, but rarely worth preserving. The room went quiet. My hand closed around the edge of the table. Before I could answer, Patrick spoke. Lord Cale. His voice was soft. Too soft. The demon's smile faltered. Patrick set down his glass. The sound was barely more than a click, but every creature in the hall reacted as if a blade had been drawn. Repeat yourself, Patrick said. Lord Cale swallowed. Your Grace, I meant no offense. Yes, you did. The gold in Patrick's eyes burned brighter. He was still smiling. That was the frightening part. You aimed it poorly, Patrick continued, but you meant it. Lord Cale's confidence cracked. I only spoke of humans as they are. Patrick rose. The hall seemed to shrink around him. Humans, he said, created every good thing I have ever loved. No one moved. Not even me. His smile disappeared. And you spoke of my fiancée as if she were an object. The blue flames overhead bent toward him. Lord Cale took one step back. Patrick lifted a hand. Not dramatically. Not with effort. Just a small motion of his fingers. Lord Cale vanished. There was no scream, no blood, no smoke. One moment he stood beside our table, dressed in silver and arrogance. The next, he was gone. The silence afterward was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. I stared at the empty space, then at Patrick. He looked out over the room, calm and terrible. Lady Holloway is under my protection, he said. Mercy House is under my protection. Any insult offered to her, the children she loves, or the humanity you mistake for weakness, will be answered by me. No one breathed. Patrick sat back down and reached for another pastry, as if he had not just erased a noble from existence. I caught his wrist before he could take it. His eyes shifted to my hand, then to my face. Where did he go? I asked. Away. That is not an answer. It is the safest one. Is he dead? Patrick studied me for a long moment. No. The tightness in my chest eased by one small degree. Will he come back? If he learns manners. That could take a while. Optimistic of you. I let go of his wrist slowly. Around us, conversation began again in careful, trembling pieces. No one looked directly at me now. Not with hunger. not with mockery, with fear. And that was when I understood. Patrick Vale was not pretending to be dangerous. His jokes were not softness. They were curtains. Behind them stood something old enough and powerful enough to make all of hell lower its eyes. He leaned closer, voice once again light. "You're staring. You made him disappear." He was rude. "You cannot make everyone who insults me disappear." "I can." "Patrick, I did not say I would. I said I can." That was worse. He picked up the pastry I had stopped him from stealing and placed it gently on my plate. A peace offering, or a warning. I could not tell anymore. I looked at the golden sugar shining beneath the blue firelight. Then I looked at him. For the first time since I had fallen into hell, I wondered whether saving Mercy House had cost me more than 30 days. Patrick smiled again. Beautiful, annoying, terrifying. "Eat nothing," he murmured. "But keep smiling, sweetheart. Everyone is watching." By my third day in the underground hell, I had learned 3 important things. First, never trust fruit that hummed. Second, if a hallway rearranged itself, arguing with it only made the hallway smug. Third, Patrick was at his most suspicious when he was being helpful. After Lord Kale vanished at the gathering, the entire underworld changed the way it looked at me. Before, I had been a curiosity, a human, a church girl in a borrowed gown, foolish enough to stand beside the demon duke of the 7th circle. Now, demons stepped out of my path as if I carried a plague. Patrick called it social progress. I called it deeply unsettling. "They respect you," he said over breakfast, stealing a sugared roll from my plate. "They are terrified of me." "Exactly. Respect. That is not the same thing. It is in hell." I reached for the roll, but he lifted it out of reach with infuriating ease. "That was mine. You weren't eating it. Because you told me not to eat anything unless you approved it." "I approve this." He took a bite. "For me? For someone. Patrick." He smiled around the stolen bread. "You say my name like you're filing a complaint. I am always filing a complaint." "Efficient woman." He said things like that just to watch my temper rise. I knew it. He knew I knew it. That did not stop me from wanting to throw a napkin at his head. But somewhere between the second stolen pastry and the third ridiculous comment, I began noticing things I'd been too frightened to see before. Patrick was feared everywhere he went. Not respected. Not loved. Feared. When he entered a room, conversations died. Servants bowed so low they nearly folded in half. Nobles who had been laughing moments before went silent and careful, their eyes fixed anywhere but his face. Even Morrow, who seemed carved out of discipline, never spoke to Patrick unless invited. No one touched him. No one teased him. No one called him by name. Except me. And every time I did, something flickered behind his golden eyes before he covered it with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. The first time I noticed it, I had been praying. There was no chapel in Blackthorn Keep, which felt both expected and inconvenient. So I made one corner of my enormous suite into the closest thing I could manage. I placed a chair near the window, set my Bible on the small table beside it, and prayed facing the burning sky because God could hear me anywhere, even in hell. Especially in hell, I hoped. I had just bowed my head when Patrick appeared in the doorway without knocking. "Do you always talk with your eyes closed?" he asked. I opened one eye. "Do you always interrupt conversations with God?" "Only when they involve me." They did not. They might have. I'm a very popular subject. "You are a very exhausting subject." He leaned against the doorframe, all black silk and lazy amusement. "What were you asking for?" "Patience." How disappointing. I was hoping for lightning. "Keep talking." His smile widened, but for once he did not step into the room. He stayed at the threshold, as if there were an invisible line he would not cross. That surprised me. "What?" I asked. "Nothing." "You're staring." "I do that." It's part of my sinister charm. You're hovering. I also do that. Patrick. There it was again, that little pause. Then he pushed away from the doorframe. Pray away, church girl. I'll try not to burst into flame. Try hard. He left before I could see whether he was smiling. That was how most of our days went. He appeared when he pleased, annoyed me on purpose, stole desserts he had specifically warned me not to eat, and gave me advice in the least comforting way possible. But at night, the keep changed. The great halls became quieter. The ember rivers beneath the glass floors pulsed softly. The windows reflected a sky that never brightened, only shifted from red to darker red. Servants disappeared into unseen corridors, and the vastness of Blackthorn Keep settled around me like a cathedral built for one lonely sinner. On the fourth night, I could not sleep. I told myself it was the unfamiliar bed. Then, the distant bells. Then the fact that my room overlooked a valley filled with fire. But the truth was simpler. I was worried about the children. Patrick had sworn they were safe. Morrow had confirmed the shelter was repaired. Still, my heart did not know how to stop counting heads just because I had fallen into the Underworld. So I left my room. I wrapped my robe tighter around myself and stepped into the corridor. The hallway lamps brightened as I passed. I did not like that. Nothing should be so eager to help in hell. At the end of the corridor, I heard voices. Patrick's voice. No, Morrow, not enchanted glass. Normal glass. They're children, not artillery. I stopped outside a half-open door. Morrow replied, Your Grace, the reinforced panes would withstand invasion. If Mercy House is invaded, I'll handle it. Until then, give them windows that open. They might fall. Then install locks. They might break the locks. They're children. Breaking things is practically prayer with smaller hands. I stepped closer. Inside was a study larger than our entire church office, lined with shelves and maps that glowed faintly at the edges. At the center stood Patrick, coat discarded over a chair, sleeves rolled to his forearms. His hair was a little disordered, as if he had dragged his hand through it too many times. On the desk before him lay ledgers, letters, and a shallow bowl filled with silver flame. In that flame I saw Mercy House. My breath caught. Not a memory. Not a dream. The kitchen. Our kitchen. Mrs. Alvarez stood at the counter unpacking boxes while Father Marcus examined a stack of papers with the stunned expression of a man who had just witnessed several miracles and did not trust any of them. The cupboards were full. The leaking ceiling had been patched. New coats hung along the wall in bright colors. Patrick tapped one long finger against a list. The little one with the braids, Maya, needs a coat with deep pockets. Morrow made a note. Pockets. She hides food when she's anxious. Don't stop her. Just make sure the pockets are clean. My throat tightened. And Benny? Morrow asked. Shoes. Size 1. Something sturdy. He runs like he is personally offended by gravity. He also requested pancakes shaped like dragons. Patrick sighed. Of course he did. Denied? Approved. But not purple this time. Mrs. Alvarez looked distressed. I stared at him. Patrick Vale, feared demon duke of the Seventh Circle, terror of kings, vanisher of rude nobles, was standing barefoot in his study, arguing over children's coats and pancake shapes. You know their names, I said. Both men turned. Morrow looked as if he wished the floor would swallow him. In hell, that felt like a reasonable concern. Patrick recovered first. You're supposed to be asleep. You're supposed to be terrifying. I multitask. I stepped into the room. The silver flame flickered, showing the boys' dormitory now. New blankets, dry walls. Benny asleep with one leg hanging off the bed, exactly as always. My heart squeezed painfully. You've been watching them? Patrick's expression sobered. Only common rooms during the day, and exterior checks at night. Never bedrooms unless Morrow confirms everyone is asleep, and there is a safety concern. His gaze held mine. Your children deserve privacy. I know that. I believed him. That frightened me more than doubt would have. On the desk, Beneath one ledger, I noticed a stack of folded papers covered in crayon. I reached for them. Patrick's hand came down over the pile. Those are classified. They are written in crayon. Highly classified. Patrick. He held my gaze for one stubborn second, then removed his hand. The top drawing showed a tall figure in a black coat, holding an umbrella over Mercy House, while rain bounced off the roof. His eyes were colored yellow. Above him, in crooked letters, someone had written, "Thank you, Mr. Patrick." Below that, in smaller writing, "Miss Grace says God loves everybody, so maybe he loves you too." I pressed my lips together. Patrick looked away. Benny is a menace. He drew you an umbrella. It's a terrible umbrella. You kept it. I keep many terrible things. Morrow, for example. Morrow bowed. "An honor, Your Grace." I picked up another note. "Dear Mr. Patrick, thank you for the books. Miss Grace likes books too. Please do not be mean to her because she is our favorite. You can be second favorite if you try hard." I laughed before I could stop myself. Patrick looked personally insulted. Second favorite, after all I've done. They're children. They understand hierarchy. They understand kindness. His expression shifted. Only for a moment. But I saw it. There was no joke there. No sharp smile. No dramatic arrogance. Just a man looking at a child's messy drawing as if it were something precious and dangerous to want. Then he covered it. "They adore me," he said. "Naturally, I'm very charming. They adore you because you send them coats, books, repairs, food, and dragon pancakes." Yes, well, charm comes in many forms. The contract didn't require dragon pancakes. It required the shelter to be maintained. Pancakes are not maintenance. They maintain morale. I studied him quietly. He hated that. "Stop looking at me like that," he said. "Like what?" "Like you're about to forgive something I haven't apologized for." That silenced me. The silver flame shifted again, showing Mrs. Alvarez closing the pantry door. She paused, looked toward the ceiling, and crossed herself. Patrick pretended not to notice, but he did. "You didn't want me to know," I said softly. "I wanted you not to worry." "That is not the same thing." "No." His voice lost some of its humor. "It isn't." "Why hide it?" He looked at the drawings, then at the flame, then anywhere but me. "Gratitude makes people careless." "That's not true. In hell it is. We are not all in hell." His mouth curved faintly, but there was no joy in it. "You are for the moment." Before I could answer, the study doors opened. A servant entered with a black envelope on a silver tray. The wax seal was shaped like a crown. Morrow stiffened. The royal court. Patrick took the envelope and broke the seal with one thumb. His eyes moved over the message. Then he smiled. I immediately distrusted it. "What?" I asked. "We've been summoned to a royal gathering tomorrow evening." "That sounds awful." "It will be." "Then why are you smiling?" "Because, my dear fiancée." He folded the letter and tucked it into his pocket. "We are expected to dance." I stared at him. "I don't dance. You do now." "Patrick." He offered me his hand, still smiling like trouble in a black coat. "Consider it shelter maintenance."
I had warned Grace the royal gathering would be awful. She had accused me of exaggerating. Then the carriage doors opened before the palace of the infernal crown, and for once in her very opinionated life, Grace Holloway said nothing. The palace rose from a lake of black fire, all towers, arches, and impossible staircases. Bridges of bone-white stone stretched over the flames, crowded with nobles in jeweled masks and whispering silk. Above us, the sky churned red and gold, lit by slow-moving lightning that never struck the ground. Grace stood beside me in a gown of midnight blue, embroidered with tiny threads of gold. Her cross rested openly at her throat, The seamstress had suggested hiding it. The seamstress had left with all her fingers, which I considered generous. Grace touched the necklace, as if she knew exactly how many creatures in the courtyard were staring at it. "They're looking," she murmured. "Yes. At the cross? At you. That is not better. It is for the cross." She gave me a look. "Patrick." There it was again. My name, not title, not warning, not fearful whisper. Patrick. I had heard my name used in curses, contracts, and last words. Somehow it sounded most dangerous coming from a church girl who still believed I needed manners. I offered her my arm. "Remember," I said, "you are hopelessly in love with me. I am hopelessly reconsidering my choices." Excellent. Very convincing. Most marriages begin that way. This is not a marriage. Tell that to everyone watching. She placed her hand on my sleeve. Her touch was warm even through the fabric, and I had to make a conscious effort not to notice. I noticed anyway. The royal ballroom had been designed by monarchs with too much wealth and not enough humility. The floor was black glass, suspended over a slow river of flame. The walls were lined with mirrors that did not always reflect the living. Chandeliers burned overhead with white fire, and music drifted through the hall from musicians hidden behind a curtain of shadow. The moment we entered, the room bowed. Not to us, to me. Grace felt the movement ripple through the crowd. Her fingers tightened slightly on my arm. "Do they always do that?" she whispered. "Only when they want to keep their heads. That is not funny. It wasn't meant to be." Her eyes flicked up to my face. I smiled down at her. That was the trick, of course. Smile before anyone saw the blade. All around us, demons lowered their gazes. Dukes, barons, royal favorites, blood princes, curse makers. Every beautiful, vicious creature in that room understood the rules of survival. Do not challenge Patrick Vale. Do not touch what belongs to him. Do not assume the smile means mercy. Grace did not understand those rules at all. That was why she was still alive. That was why she frightened me. At the far end of the room, the royal dais glittered beneath a canopy of silver thorns. Several members of the infernal crown watched from their high seats. I ignored most of them. Royalty hated being ignored, which was one of life's small pleasures. But I did notice Lady Vespera standing near the steps. Everyone noticed Vespera eventually. She was lovely, in the way knives were lovely. All silver hair, ruby lips, and a smile that made promises no sane person would accept. She had survived 3 courts, 2 assassinations, and 1 brief engagement that ended with her fiancé turned into a chandelier. Her eyes settled on Grace, then on me, then back to Grace. Interesting. I hated interesting. "Who is she?" Grace asked. "Trouble wearing perfume." "That describes half the room." "Yes, but she does it professionally." Grace's mouth twitched despite herself. Before I could enjoy the victory, the music changed. A hush spread through the ballroom. Grace's fingers tightened again. Why did everyone stop talking? Because the first dance belongs to the honored couple. We are the honored couple. Regrettably. I don't know this dance. I do. That does not comfort me. It should. I'm excellent. At dancing. At nearly everything. At humility. I said nearly. She looked like she wanted to argue, but the crowd had already begun parting. A great circle opened at the center of the glass floor, leaving us with nowhere to hide and every eye in hell upon us. I guided her forward. "Patrick," she whispered, "if I step on your foot, I shall survive with dignity." "You don't do anything with dignity. Not publicly." That earned me the smallest laugh. A terrible mistake on her part. I wanted to hear it again immediately. We reached the center of the ballroom. The flames beneath the glass rolled slowly under our feet, turning her dress into moving night. I faced her and took her right hand in mine. Then I placed my other hand at her waist. She went still. So did I. It was absurd. I had held weapons forged from dead stars. I had gripped throats, crowns, treaties, dying magic. I had stood unmoved while angels screamed my name like a sentence. Grace Holloway's waist beneath my hand nearly undid me. She looked up at me, eyes wide but steady. "You're thinking too loudly." I blinked. Then I laughed under my breath. "Careful. That was almost clever. You're a bad influence." I have references. The first note rose. "Look at me," I said. "I am looking at you." "No, you're looking for exits. I can do both." Grace. Her gaze locked on mine. The ballroom blurred. That was the second mistake. The dance began with a slow turn. Grace followed stiffly at first, her steps careful, her shoulders held too high. I adjusted my grip, guiding without forcing, giving her the rhythm through the pressure of my hand. "Stop fighting me," I murmured. "I'm not fighting you. You are attempting to defeat the music. The music sounds like it wants something from me." "It does. Your left foot." She glanced down. "Don't look at your feet." "Then how will I know where they are?" "I know where they are." That is a disturbing sentence. "Trust me." Her eyebrow rose. "Temporarily," I added. That is also not comforting. But she did it. Not all at once. Grace did not surrender easily, not even to music. But little by little, her body learned the turn, the step, the pause. Her hands softened in mine, her shoulders lowered. The warmth of her settled against my palm like something I had no right to hold. And hell watched. Let them. For once, I did not care. We turned beneath the chandeliers, her gown sweeping around her ankles, gold thread catching firelight with every movement. Her cross brushed against her skin. It should have looked wrong in that room. It did not. It looked like defiance. It looked like grace. "You learned this somewhere," she said. I nearly missed a step. Nearly. Many places. That's not an answer. I'm full of those. Her eyes narrowed. "Someone taught you." A memory rose before I could stop it. A kitchen, rain against a roof, a woman laughing as she stood on my toes because I was too small to match the steps. Her hands rough from work, her voice telling me, again, "You'll get it, Patrick." The curse beneath my ribs tightened. I smiled. A terrifying woman with no patience for poor posture. "Your mother?" The word struck clean. I spun her before she could see it land. Mind the turn. "Patrick. You say my name very often for someone who claims to dislike me. I dislike many people by name." "Efficient woman." She did not smile this time. She was too busy studying me. That was the problem with kind people. They looked at wounds as if they were doors. The music deepened. The next turn required closeness. The old royal style meant to display devotion or expose lies. I drew her nearer, and her breath caught. So did mine. Annoying. Her hand rested against my shoulder now. Mine held the curve of her waist. The space between us became a dangerous, fragile thing. "Everyone is watching," she whispered. "Yes. What do they need to see? That you adore me. That is asking a lot. Lie. I'm not good at lying." "I know." For a moment she said nothing. Then her expression changed. Not into adoration. Worse, tenderness. She looked at me as if I was not a duke, not a weapon, not a monster with gold eyes and a cursed name whispered through hell. She looked at me as if I could be hurt. The mark under my ribs burned so sharply I almost lost the rhythm. Grace felt it. Of course she did. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing." "You flinched." "I never flinch." "You just did." "Then you imagined it." Gold light slipped beneath my cuff, curling around my wrist before I could smother it. Her eyes dropped. "Patrick." "Keep dancing," I said softly. "You're in pain." "Frequently." "That is not an answer." "It is the safest one." Her fingers tightened around mine. Not fear, not disgust, concern. I had forgotten how ruinous concern could be. She did not stop the dance. She did not make a scene. She simply stepped closer, following my lead with new certainty, shielding the flicker of cursed light from the watching court with her body, as if she could protect me from my own damnation. I wanted to make a joke. Nothing came. The final turn swept us across the glass floor. Flame rolled beneath us, mirrors flashed around us, and the whole court leaned in, hungry for evidence, weakness, proof. Grace lifted her chin and smiled at me. Not perfectly, not falsely enough, just enough to look like a woman choosing to stand beside me. The last note faded. For one breath there was silence. Then the ballroom erupted into applause. Careful applause, frightened applause, but applause nonetheless. I bowed over Grace's hand because the court expected it. Because it was theatre. Because if I did not put my mouth near her knuckles, I might say something unforgivably honest. "You survived," I murmured. "You're bleeding light. How critical of you to notice." "Are you all right?" "No, you stepped on me twice." "I did not." "Emotionally then?" Her mouth softened, and my cursed heart did something foolish inside my chest. Before she could answer, a slow clap rose above the others. Lady Vespera stepped into the edge of the dance floor, smiling like a secret sharpened to a point. "How touching," she said, her silver eyes fixed on Grace. "Almost enough to make one believe it." Vespera's words cut through the applause like a blade through silk. Almost enough to make one believe it. The ballroom went still. That was the trouble with hell. Give it a drop of blood, and every creature in the room would lean closer, hoping for a wound. I kept Grace's hand in mine. Her fingers were warm, steady, not calm exactly. Grace Holloway had far too much sense to be calm while an entire court waited to see if she would be humiliated. But she did not pull away. That alone made her braver than half the nobles in the room. I smiled at Vespera. Several demons nearest her took one cautious step back. "Lady Vespera," I said, "how generous of you to share a thought nobody requested." Her smile sharpened. "Forgive me, Your Grace. It is only that the court has endured many performances tonight. I would not know. I stopped paying attention when you arrived." A nervous ripple of laughter moved through the room. Vespera did not look away from Grace. "Human brides are fashionable now, are they?" Grace lifted her chin. "I wouldn't know. I try not to follow trends set by people who decorate with bones." A real laugh escaped someone near the musicians. It died quickly, but not quickly enough. My smile widened despite myself. Vespera's eyes flashed. "She has spirit," she said. "I can see why she amuses you." "She does many things to me," I replied. "Amusement is occasionally one of them." Grace's fingers tightened around mine in warning. "Good girl. Warn me later." Vespera stepped closer to the edge of the dance floor. Still, a dance proves very little. Actors dance. Prisoners dance if the chains are pretty enough. The air changed. There it was. Not mockery, accusation. The crown stirred upon the dais. The royal watchers leaned forward, silver eyes hungry beneath their thorned canopy. Grace felt it too. I sensed the small shift in her breathing. I could have ended Vespera with a thought. The temptation was magnificent. But that was the trap. If I silenced her by force, the court would taste fear. If the court tasted fear, they would wonder what I was hiding. Wondering would become whispering. Whispering would become investigation. And somewhere between court gossip and royal law, Grace would become a target with a human heartbeat. Vespera knew it. I hated when my enemies were competent. "Careful," I said softly. Her gaze flicked to me at last. "Am I wrong?" "Yes." "Then prove it." The room held its breath. Grace's hand went motionless in mine. Vespera's smile became almost gentle. That was how one knew she meant harm. "Surely the demon duke of the seventh circle is not shy. Kiss your bride before the court. Let us all see this great love we are meant to believe in." Every eye turned to Grace. I felt anger rise in me, black and familiar. Not because of the challenge. I had endured far worse from creatures far more frightening than Vespera, because they were looking at Grace as if she were evidence, as if she were an object to be displayed, tested, proven. Mine said something ancient and vicious inside me. No, not mine, protected. There was a difference, even if hell had never cared to learn it. I turned slightly, placing myself between Grace and the worst of the watching faces. "Say no," I murmured, low enough that only she could hear, "and I will end this another way." Her eyes searched mine. "Will your other way involve screaming?" she whispered. "Likely." "Blood?" "Possibly." "Property damage?" "Grace, I am under pressure." Her mouth almost curved, almost. Then her expression sobered. "If I say yes, it is because I choose to, not because she told us to." Something inside my chest went very quiet. "Yes," I said. She swallowed once, then nodded. "Then ask me properly." The court could not hear her, but they saw me hesitate. I who had made kings crawl. I who had broken armies. I who had once turned a rebellion into ash before breakfast. I hesitated because a church girl with a cross at her throat expected better of me. And damn me, I wanted to be better. I bowed my head toward her. "Grace Holloway," I asked softly, "may I kiss you?" Her eyes warmed with something that hurt worse than fear. "Yes, Patrick," she said. "You may." My name in her mouth nearly ruined me before the kiss did. I intended to make it brief. Convincing, yes. Tender enough to humiliate Vespera. Possessive enough to satisfy the court. Controlled enough that I could step away afterward and pretend my heart had not remembered it was once human. That was the plan. Grace ruined it immediately. I lifted one hand to her face, brushing my thumb along the curve of her jaw. Her brown skin was warm beneath my touch. Her lashes lowered. Her hands settled against my chest, right over the cursed mark hidden beneath my coat. I should have stepped back. Instead, I kissed her. The court vanished. The music, the flames beneath the glass, the royal watchers, Vespera's poisonous smile, all of it fell away, as if the world had been cut loose from its strings. There was only Grace. Her mouth was soft under mine, hesitant for the span of a breath before she kissed me back. Not for the court, not for the lie. For one terrifying second she kissed me as if she forgot we were pretending. Or worse, as if she remembered and chose not to care. The curse beneath my ribs flared. I braced for pain. It did not come. Instead, warmth spread through me, unfamiliar and bright, threading through places I had long ago surrendered to darkness. It was not mercy. Mercy was cleaner than this. It was not forgiveness either. It was wanting. Human, helpless, ruinous wanting. Grace's fingers curled into my coat. I heard myself inhale sharply against her mouth, and that small sound should have shamed me. It did not. Nothing about her shamed me. That was the dangerous part. I drew back before I forgot every law that kept her safe. Grace's eyes opened slowly. For a moment, neither of us moved. Her hand was still against my chest. My thumb still rested near the corner of her mouth. The cross at her throat glinted between us, bright and defiant. That, she whispered, was convincing. My voice came out lower than intended. Catastrophically. Color rose in her cheeks. I wanted to kiss her again. Instead, I released her and turned back to the court. A man could survive many things if he faced outward quickly enough. The ballroom remained silent. Not skeptical silence, stunned silence. Then from the royal dais, one of the crown's speakers clapped twice. The sound cracked through the room. A moment later, the court followed. Applause rolled over us, cautious at first, then louder. Demons bowed their heads. Nobles whispered behind jeweled hands. Several looked at Grace with a new emotion entirely. Not fear, calculation. I disliked that more. Vespera watched us without applauding. "How moving," she said. "Careful," I replied. "If you keep admiring me, people will talk." Her gaze dropped briefly to my chest. Too briefly for Grace to notice. Not briefly enough for me. She had seen the flare of the curse. Vespera smiled. "Forgive me, Your Grace. I may have been mistaken. Try not to make a habit of it. It would confuse everyone. For now," she added. There it was again, the blade beneath the silk. She curtsied to Grace. "Lady Holloway." Grace did not curtsy back. She simply said, "Lady Vespera." I nearly laughed. My fiancé was going to get us both killed. My fiancé. The thought should have amused me. It did not. I guided Grace away from the center of the ballroom before anyone else could challenge us, praise us, or ask to be turned inside out. We passed beneath an archway of black stone and out onto a balcony overlooking the lake of fire. The noise of the ballroom dimmed behind us. Grace pulled her hand from my arm, not roughly, but enough for me to feel the absence. "That wasn't only an act," she said. I looked out over the flames. "You're very critical of my performance." "Patrick." There was no anger in her voice. That was worse. I could defend against anger. I had armor for anger. Concern slipped through every crack. "No," I said finally. "It wasn't only an act." She was quiet for a moment. Behind us, music began again. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means Vespera is more dangerous than I hoped." "That is not what I asked." "I know." Grace stepped closer, and because I was a fool, I let her. "You were in pain during the dance," she said. "Then during the kiss, something happened. I felt it. You felt nothing. Do not lie to me." A laugh escaped me, humorless and soft. "You command demons now." "No, just you, apparently." I looked at her then. She stood in the firelight with her shoulders squared, her cross shining at her throat, her dark eyes full of questions I had avoided for centuries. Everyone in hell saw a monster and stepped back. Grace Holloway saw a wound and stepped closer. It was the most reckless thing anyone had ever done. Before I could answer, the balcony doors opened. Morrow appeared, his expression carved from worry. "Your Grace." I did not take my eyes off Grace. This had better involve treason. "The Crown requests a private audience." Grace looked between us. "Now?" Morrow bowed. "Immediately." Of course. Hell never let a man bleed in peace. I offered Grace my arm again. This time she hesitated before taking it. The hesitation hurt more than I expected. Then her hand settled on my sleeve, careful but steady. "We are not done talking," she said. "No," I replied, leading her back toward the waiting court. I'm beginning to fear we are not.
I entered the private audience with my lips still remembering Patrick Vale. That was inconvenient. There were many things I should have been focused on. The infernal crown, Lady Vespera's accusation, the fact that half the royal court had just watched a demon duke kiss a church girl like the world might end if he stopped. Instead, my mind kept returning to the warmth of his hand against my jaw. I tightened my fingers around his sleeve and silently prayed for composure. Patrick glanced down at me. "If you are asking heaven to strike me, kindly request accuracy. I dislike being singed unnecessarily. I am asking for patience. Ah, the crueler miracle. Patrick." His smile softened for half a breath. Then the doors opened. The private chamber of the infernal crown looked less like a room and more like a judgment waiting to happen. Black stone walls curved around us. Silver flames burned in narrow sconces. At the center stood 3 thrones beneath a canopy of thorns, and on those thrones sat figures too still to feel alive. I felt Patrick change beside me, not visibly. To anyone else, he was still all lazy elegance and sharp amusement. But I felt the shift through his arm. The warmth vanished. The man who stole pastries and argued about children's shoes disappeared behind the demon duke of the Seventh Circle. A woman on the middle throne leaned forward. Her crown looked carved from bone and starlight. "So," she said, her voice smooth as oil, "this is the human." Patrick's smile did not move. "This is Grace Holloway. Use her name." The chamber went silent. The crowned woman's gaze slid to me. "Does it speak for itself?" I lifted my chin. "When necessary." A faint sound came from Morrow behind us. It might have been a cough. It might have been panic trying to escape politely. Patrick, however, looked delighted. The woman's eyes narrowed. "Bold." "Frequently," Patrick said, "it's becoming a problem." "And you claim to love her?" The question landed between us like a knife. My heart gave one hard beat. Patrick did not look at me. "I claim many things. This one happens to be true." I knew it was part of the performance. I knew the contract required it. Still, something in my chest tightened, foolish and painful. Another figure on the left throne laughed softly. "A demon duke, brought low by a church girl. How sentimental." Patrick's golden eyes shifted toward him. "Careful. I have killed for less tedious observations." The laughter stopped. The woman on the middle throne studied us for a long moment. "Humans are fragile creatures." "So are treaties," Patrick replied. "Yet we keep pretending those matter. They age, they break, they die." "Yes," he said. The word was quiet. Too quiet. "They beg," the crowned woman continued. "They betray. They build little houses and little gods, and spend their short lives pretending any of it lasts." I felt Patrick's arm go still beneath my hand. When he spoke, his voice had lost every trace of mockery. "Funny," he said. "Humans created every good thing I've ever loved." The chamber changed. Not loudly, not dramatically. But I felt it. The royal figures stared at him as if he had confessed to something obscene. Patrick did not lower his head. He did not look ashamed. If anything, he stood straighter, proud in a way I had not seen before. Not proud of power, proud of memory. The crowned woman's mouth curved. "How peculiar you remain, Vale." "I try." Her gaze returned to me. "You have 30 days under contract, do you not?" My stomach tightened. Patrick's smile came back, sharp at the edges. "You've been reading my private agreements. I'm touched. If the engagement is proven false, the Crown will consider it fraud against royal authority. If you find a law I have not already broken more impressively, do send word. Duke." "Majesty." The 2 words smiled at each other with teeth. At last she lifted one hand. "Go. Enjoy your romance while it lasts." Patrick bowed with flawless, insulting grace. I curtsied because Father Marcus had raised me with manners, even if hell did not deserve them. Then Patrick led me out. The doors shut behind us. For several steps, neither of us spoke. The corridor beyond the royal chamber was empty, lined with mirrors that reflected us a second too slowly. In one, Patrick's smile disappeared before it left his actual face. I stopped walking. He stopped too, though he did not turn around immediately. "What did you mean?" I asked. "About what?" "Do not do that." "Do what?" "Act like you don't know which truth I'm asking about." That made him turn. The hallway flames painted gold across the sharp lines of his face. He looked tired suddenly. Not weak, never that. But worn, as if the mask he carried had become heavier than usual. "You heard the crown," he said lightly. "I am peculiar. You said humans created every good thing you've ever loved. They did. You said it like you meant it. I try to mean what I say. It makes lying more interesting." Patrick. His name softened the air between us. I remembered the first time he had told it to me. Patrick. That's a human name. Most don't. Back then he had smiled and changed the subject. Now there was nowhere left for him to hide that I was willing to let him keep. I stepped closer. "Were you human?" His expression did not break, but everything behind it went still. For one breath I thought he would make a joke. I almost wanted him to. A joke would have been easier than the ache gathering in his eyes. Then he said, "Yes." The word was plain. No thunder, no fire, no grand confession. Just yes. My throat tightened. "Patrick?" "I was born human," he said. "Not noble, not remarkable, not cursed from the cradle. Just a boy with muddy boots, a mother who sang badly, and a habit of stealing apples from a neighbor who absolutely deserved it. Despite myself, I smiled. Did he? He watered his trees with the arrogance of a tyrant. That is not a reason. It is an excellent reason when one is 11. He looked past me toward the slow mirrors. His face had changed again, but not into the monster. Into something younger, something unguarded enough to hurt. "My mother named me Patrick," he said. "Before Vale, before Duke, before every title hell nailed to my skin. Patrick was mine first." "You kept it." "Of course I kept it." There was pride in his voice. Quiet, steady, unashamed. "Demons love names that sound like disasters," he continued. "Malachor, Ravok, Azrael. Names with smoke in them. Names that make mortals tremble before anyone has earned it." His mouth curved faintly. "They offered me others." "What did you say?" "I was extremely impolite." "That sounds like you." "Yes, but with worse hair." A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. His eyes came back to mine. For a moment the hall felt less like hell. "Are you ashamed of it?" I asked softly. "Being human?" His brows drew together as if the question offended him. "No." The answer came quickly, firmly. "No, Grace, never." I went still. He looked toward the mirrors again, but this time his voice did not hide. "Humans are ridiculous," he said. "Short-lived, stubborn, desperate to make meaning out of dust. They plant gardens they may never sit in. They bake bread while grieving. They sing to babies who cannot understand the words. They tell stories beside deathbeds. They make stained glass, soup, violins, lullabies." His expression softened. Dragon pancakes, apparently. My eyes burned. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "Don't," he said. "If you cry, I'll be forced to say something unforgivable, to restore balance." "I'm not crying." "Excellent. Neither am I." "You're impossible." "I've cultivated it." I studied him then, really studied him. The horns, the golden eyes, the elegant black clothing, the terrible power coiled under his skin, and beneath all of it, somehow, impossibly, a human boy who had kept his name because it was the first thing he had ever owned. "Is that why you act differently with me?" I asked. Patrick's smile faded. I don't act differently with you. You do. No. His voice lowered. With everyone else, I act. With you, I forget. My heart stumbled. He looked almost angry at himself for saying it. Everyone in this place knows what to see when they look at me, he continued. A weapon, a monster, a ruler, a curse wearing a coat. They're comfortable with that. It gives them rules. And me? You called me Patrick like it was just a name. His gaze held mine. You looked at me and expected manners, rest, honesty. You asked if I was hurt before you asked what damage I had caused. That seems normal. No, Grace, his voice roughened. It is not. The cursed light beneath his collar flickered once. I reached toward him, then stopped before touching the mark. What happened to you? I whispered. His expression closed, but not completely. Not this time. That, he said, is the part of the story where people usually stop seeing the man. I won't. You don't know that. I know myself. For a long moment, Patrick said nothing. Then, somewhere down the corridor, the royal bells began to toll. Once, twice, 3 times. Patrick looked toward the sound, and the gold in his eyes darkened. Then tomorrow, he said quietly, I'll tell you why hell cursed me for remembering what I was. Tomorrow arrived in hell without a sunrise. The sky outside my window shifted from deep red to a bruised gold, as if the underworld had heard of morning but refused to participate properly. I had slept badly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Patrick in that mirrored corridor, looking at me like the truth was a door he expected me to shut in his face. I sat at the edge of the bed and touched the cross at my throat. Lord, I whispered, give me courage to hear him clearly. Not courage to be unafraid. That seemed unrealistic. Just courage to stay kind. A knock came at the door. Morrow entered after I called for him, dressed in his usual severe black, his silver hair tied neatly at his neck. He bowed. Lady Holloway, His Grace is waiting. I stood. Where? The old garden. Hell has gardens. His expression barely changed. Only stubborn ones. That sounded like Patrick. Morrow led me through corridors I had not seen before. These were quieter than the grand halls, with no watching nobles or whispering mirrors. The stone here was older, rougher, threaded with veins of dull gold. The air smelled faintly of smoke and rain. At the end of the passage stood 2 iron doors. Morrow stopped before them. Will he be all right? I asked. For the first time, his polished calm cracked. I have served His Grace for 3 centuries, he said quietly. I have seen him wounded, betrayed, poisoned, challenged, and mildly inconvenienced before breakfast. Despite myself, I almost smiled. Morrow did not. I have never seen him frightened until you arrived. The words settled heavily in my chest. Before I could answer, he opened the doors. The garden beyond should not have existed. Black soil stretched beneath a glass dome veined with firelight. Silver-leafed trees bent over narrow paths. Flowers glowed faintly in the shadows, red and violet and blue, their petals open toward a sky that had no sun. At the center of it all stood Patrick Vale. He wore no coat. That detail struck me first. Patrick seemed like the kind of man who would wear elegance into a battlefield and sarcasm into his own funeral. But now he stood in a plain black shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the sharp lines of his face bare of any courtly amusement. The cursed mark was visible at the open collar of his shirt, gold and black, like light trapped under broken glass. He looked up as I entered. Grace Holloway, he said. You came. You asked me to. I ask people to do things constantly. They rarely do the sensible ones. I'm starting to notice that about your social circle. His mouth curved, but the smile did not last. Morrow closed the doors behind me, leaving us alone. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Patrick gestured toward a stone bench beneath one of the silver trees. "I considered telling you over breakfast," he said, "but there are limits to how much trauma pairs well with toast." Patrick, yes. Truth, he exhaled softly. Cruel invention. I sat on the bench. He remained standing for a moment longer, as if distance could protect either of us. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew something small. A wooden lamb. It was old, worn smooth by time, one little leg chipped at the base. Patrick held it carefully in his palm, with a gentleness that made my throat tighten. Her name was Miriam, he said. I looked from the toy to him. She was 6, he continued, missing one front tooth, terrible at whispering, very committed to the belief that lambs could bite monsters if properly motivated. A small ache moved through me. What happened to her? Patrick's gaze stayed on the little wooden lamb. She was taken. The garden seemed to grow quieter. By who? Her uncle signed a contract he did not read. Humans do that often. Demons encourage it. His voice hardened. The debt came due. He offered the child instead of himself. My stomach turned. He could do that? No, not legally, not morally. But hell has never been overly burdened by morality, and legality is flexible when nobody powerful cares. And you cared. His fingers closed slightly around the lamb. I noticed. That is not the same thing. It was supposed to be. The pain beneath his words was old. Older than the garden. Older than the title he wore. Patrick looked toward the trees, though I did not think he was seeing them. They brought her before the Hollow King. The name passed through the air like a door opening somewhere deep underground. My cross warmed against my skin. Patrick noticed. Of course he did. He ruled parts of hell before the infernal crown learned to sit upright, he said. Ancient, petty, starving. He liked human fear best when it came from children. I gripped the edge of the bench. What was he going to do to her? Patrick's expression went terribly still. Turn her into a vessel. A pretty word for a terrible thing. I did not ask him to explain. I'd not need to. He looked down at the lamb again. Miriam saw me standing there in all my dreadful glory, and asked if I knew the way home. My eyes burned. She asked you. Yes. What did you say? I said yes. His voice lowered. Then I took her. The garden seemed to hold its breath. Patrick's mouth twisted faintly. It was not elegant. There was shouting, fire. 3 princes lost teeth. 1 baron lost considerably more. The Hollow King told me to put her down. And did you? His golden eyes met mine. No. There it was. Not pride and cruelty. Not shame. Just the steady certainty of a man who had made one good choice and would make it again, no matter the cost. I carried her through the old gates, he said, back to the human world, left her at a church in Devon before dawn. His thumb brushed over the lamb's worn head. She lived, married a baker, had 4 daughters and 1 son, hated carrots until the day she died. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. Patrick saw it and looked away. Don't do that. Do what? Look as if this was noble. It was. It was theft. It was mercy. His jaw tightened. Hell disagreed. The cursed mark at his chest flickered, gold light threading beneath his skin. The Hollow King could not kill me outright. I had become too useful, too feared, too difficult to replace. So he did something more patient. Patrick's smile was bitter. He cursed the part of me that had betrayed him. Your heart? My humanity. The word landed softly between us. He said if I wished to remember being human, then I could remember it alone. He made fear cling to my name, made every kindness curdle before anyone could trust it, made my touch burn when tenderness came too close. He ensured anyone who might have loved me would see a monster first, last, and always. I could hardly breathe. Patrick continued anyway, because now that the door was open, perhaps he could not close it. There was a condition, of course. Curses adore cruelty dressed as hope. If someone pure of heart freely chose me as her bridegroom, knowing what I was and what I had done, the curse would break. My hands went cold. That's why you needed me. Yes. The honesty hurt more than a lie might have. Patrick looked at me fully then. No smile. No performance. Yes, Grace. At first I needed you because the curse required someone like you. I told myself a contract would be enough. A technicality. A performance. 30 days. Your shelter saved. My curse weakened. No souls taken. No harm done. And then, his gaze softened, and that was somehow worse. Then you called me Patrick. My heart ached. He opened his hand. The old wooden lamb rested there like a confession. Then you prayed in my house, scolded me for skipping meals, asked if I was hurt, looked at my teeth and my horns and my cursed hands, and somehow decided I still needed kindness. His voice roughened. I did not plan for you. I stood slowly. Patrick stepped back. That small movement wounded me more than anything he had said. I can release you, he said. What? He lifted one hand, and the contract appeared in the air between us, written in burning gold. Mercy House remains funded. The children remain protected. Every debt erased. I will send you home today. My chest tightened. Patrick, you should go before the curse turns its attention fully on you. You don't get to make that choice for me. I am trying to keep you alive. No, you are trying to leave first, so I cannot. His mouth closed. I stepped toward him. You saved a child, I said, and hell punished you for it. It made me what I am. No. My voice shook, but I did not let it weaken. It tried to make you forget who you were. The cursed mark flared brighter. Grace, he warned. I kept walking. You are not original, you know. That startled him. I beg your pardon? I run a shelter. Do you know how many frightened, wounded people have tried to convince me they were too much trouble to care for? His expression shifted. They say it differently, I continued. Some shout. Some leave before breakfast. Some break things. Some act like jokes or walls. I looked him straight in the eye. But it is always the same lie. And what lie is that? That being hurt makes them unworthy of staying with. For once, Patrick Vale had no clever answer. I reached for him. He caught my wrist before my hand touched the mark. Do not, he said. It will hurt. Me? His silence answered. Gently, I turned my wrist in his grip until I could hold his hand instead. Then we stop if it hurts you, I said. His fingers trembled once. Only once. Then he let me place my hand over the cursed light. Heat surged beneath my palm. Patrick inhaled sharply, but he did not pull away. His hand covered mine, holding it there as if he both feared and needed the contact. The garden shuddered. Every flower closed at once. Far beneath us, something ancient groaned. Patrick's eyes darkened with dread. What was that? I whispered. He looked toward the black soil, toward the roots, toward something waking deep below hell. The curse, he said. It heard you choose to stay. The old garden did not merely tremble. It woke. Black soil rippled beneath my feet. The silver trees bent inward as if listening. Every closed flower turned its face toward Patrick and me, and beneath my hand, the cursed mark in his chest burned like trapped lightning. Patrick's fingers tightened over mine. Grace, he said, voice rough, step away. No, that was not a suggestion. I heard you. And yet, his mouth twitched, but pain cut the almost smile short. You have developed a deeply inconvenient habit of disobeying terrifying men. Only when they're being foolish. I am rarely foolish. You tried to send me home before breakfast. A strategic mercy. A cowardly one. That silenced him. The garden shuddered again, harder this time. Somewhere above us, the glass dome cracked in a slow, jagged line. The doors flew open. Morrow entered with 2 guards behind him, though the guards stopped at the threshold, as if the garden itself had teeth. "Your Grace," Morrow said, his controlled voice strained. "The old wards are breaking." Patrick did not look away from me. They would pick today. Gold fire flashed between us. The contract appeared in the air, unrolling like a ribbon of flame. My signature glowed at the bottom. Patrick's name burned beside it. Then new words carved themselves beneath the original terms. The shelter is saved. The children are protected. The debt is paid. The bride may return untouched. My heart stopped. Behind the contract, the air split open. Not into fire, into home. Mercy House stood on the other side, warm with morning light. The kitchen windows were fogged from breakfast. I saw Mrs. Alvarez at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. Eli sat at the table with his blanket around his shoulders. Tessa was drawing with her tongue caught between her teeth. The twins were arguing over who got the chipped blue mug. Safe, fed, alive. My eyes burned. Patrick saw the look on my face, and something in him broke before the curse ever could. "There," he said quietly. "Everything you asked for." The portal widened. I could smell coffee, soap, toast slightly burned at the edges. Mercy House, my children, my life. Patrick released my hand. The loss of his touch felt too loud. "Go, Grace." I turned to him. The curse had spread up his throat in dark golden lines. He stood rigid, shoulders locked, eyes bright with pain he was trying to make look like arrogance. "Patrick, no." His voice sharpened. "Do not make this noble. Do not turn it into one of your shelter sermons about staying with difficult people until they stop biting." That was one sermon. It was memorable. "You listened?" Regrettably. I stepped toward him, but the contract flared between us like a warning. Patrick's jaw tightened. "The choice has to be free. No bargain. No debt. No pity. You return now, and the contract ends cleanly. Your shelter remains funded. Your children never know hunger because of me. And you?" He smiled. It was terrible. I continue being handsome, feared, and emotionally unavailable. "Patrick." His smile vanished. "If you stay," he said, "the curse will claim you as part of its ending. Hell will not forgive you for choosing me. The crown will watch you. Vespera will hunt for weakness. And the thing that made me this way will wake fully." The garden groaned beneath us, as if confirming every word. I looked back at Mercy House. Eli laughed at something Tessa said. Mrs. Alvarez swatted at the twins with a dish towel. Father Marcus entered the kitchen carrying a box of donated coats, his face full of relief. They did not need me afraid. They needed me faithful. I touched the cross at my throat and closed my eyes. "Lord," I whispered, "help me know the difference between running from danger and being led away from it." No thunder answered. No angel appeared, only the steady beat of my own heart, and Patrick's uneven breathing across from me. When I opened my eyes, I looked at the man. Hell had tried to bury beneath teeth and titles and fear. I saw the demon duke. I saw the monster everyone whispered about. But I also saw the boy who had carried a stolen child back to daylight. The man who kept crayon drawings in secret. The impossible creature who had saved my shelter and then pretended not to care. I walked away from the portal. Patrick's expression changed. For once, there was no mask quick enough to hide him. "Grace," he said, and my name sounded like a warning and a prayer at once. I stepped around the burning contract. The flames snapped at me, but they did not touch my skin. "I am not choosing hell," I said. "I am not choosing danger. I am not choosing a curse. He stared at me. I am choosing Patrick Vale. The contract split down the center. Morrow inhaled sharply. The portal to Mercy House flickered, but before it vanished, I saw Tessa lift her head, as if she had heard me. Then home folded away, safe beyond the reach of fire. Patrick shook his head once. You impossible woman. You cultivated it. A laugh escaped him. It broke into a gasp. The cursed mark erupted. Gold light tore through the dark lines beneath his skin. Patrick dropped to one knee, one hand braced against the soil. The garden screamed, not with a voice, but with roots and stone and shattering glass. I ran to him. Don't touch me, he forced out. I am very tired of that sentence. I knelt before him and took his face in both hands. His skin was burning hot. His golden eyes locked on mine, terrified not for himself, but for me. The curse surged between us. Pain flashed through my palms, sharp and cold. But beneath it came something warmer, something alive. The cross at my throat blazed with steady light. Patrick's breath caught. The dark veins across his chest cracked like old glass. One by one, they began to break. He bowed forward, forehead nearly touching mine. His hands gripped my wrists, not to push me away, but to hold on. Grace, he whispered, I'm here. You should not be. I know. The last word had barely left my mouth when the soil at the center of the garden split open. A sound rose from below. Laughter. Ancient. Hollow. Hungry. Patrick went completely still. The flowers withered in a circle around us. From the broken earth, a voice spoke. So the bride chooses the cursed heart. Morrow drew his blade. The Hollow King. Patrick lifted his head, eyes burning brighter than I'd ever seen them. You do not get to speak to her. The voice laughed again. Then let her carry what you tried to escape. Something cold wrapped around my wrist. I looked down. A black thorn mark curled against my skin, tightening like ink sinking beneath the surface. Patrick's face changed with horror. Far below the garden, something vast began to climb.
Take me to heaven. There's a light in your eyes I can't explain, like a fire running through my veins. Every time that you say my name, I'm never quite the same. I was drifting in a world so cold, afraid of letting my heart unfold. Then you came and you pulled me through. Now I'm lost in you. When you hold me, the walls come down. I forget every fear I found. In your arms I can finally breathe. You're all I need. Don't you let this moment slip away. Say the words that you're scared to say. If this love is a chance we take, don't let it break. Show me heaven tonight. Take me higher than I've ever been. Hold me close, don't let go. Let this feeling pull me in. If forever is real, then I'm ready to fall into you. Through the dark, through the light, all I need is you. So don't let go, don't say goodbye. You're the reason I can fly. If love is where we begin, take me to heaven.